Last week on the Palm Bluff Commercial presents The Newsroom.
Retired school teacher and principal, and you transitioned to the political arena. How's that been?
It has not been as difficult as I thought it would be. I thought it would be totally unbearable. But when it came down to this profession, I would have much rather to have been a council member maybe before going into the mayor's office, but it didn't happen that way.
I'm not passing any judgment on Chief Franklin here, but was that the best move? Was that the most transparent move, considering what had gone on before that?
I think for what I saw happening in the department at that time, it was a move that I needed to make. Okay.
And let's be clear, it is your call.
It is my call.
It is not.
And it was a move that I felt that I needed to make. So rather than hesitate on doing something that I felt was needed, I just made the decision, the executive administrative decision to make that call.
We sat down with Joni Alexander, Councilmember Alexander, a few weeks ago, and I think you would consider her one of your supporters.
I do.
And she said council members, she was rather critical of your administration in this way. And she said that council members were routinely kept out of the loop of what is going on in city government, and that as much criticism as Mayor Debbie Hollingsworth got, which she worked in her administration, that your administration is worse at being transparent than Hollingsworth. How do you respond to that? Okay, we interviewed Councilmember Alexander and her husband, the county judge, Gerald Robinson, a few weeks ago, and talking to Ms. Alexander, who I think you would consider a supporter. She was pointed in her comments about council members. She said their council members are left out of the loop in a lot of cases. That she feels like that when they are required to, they come in and approve things, but otherwise they a lot of times don't know what's going on in city government. And she compared it to her time working for Debbie Hollingsworth, who was the mayor, and she said as much criticism as Mayor Hollingsworth got, that your administration in some ways is worse at being transparent than Hollingsworth's. How do you respond to that?
The only response I can have to that is, I'm sure, much like Hollingsworth, she was probably doing her best to be transparent. And that's basically what we do. We have no intention of trying to conceal projects or activities or what's going on from council members or the general public. So we report to them what we're working on, projects that we're working on. We talk about what we might need to move forward with, projects that we're moving forward with. And a lot of times, the projects that we're working on are those that have been voiced by the community, that are needed in our community.
Yeah, we've talked about providing homes for low-income people, homeless people, and occasionally I hear complaints about the sometimes deplorable condition of rent property. Is there anyone in the administration that protects the rights of renters? Does anyone go out and inspect homes, rent houses, and apartments to make sure they are safe and habitable?
Code enforcement, goes through the community, but and checks homes that are dilapidated. but there is no one who checks the rental properties, I guess you might say. If they're doing work on the properties, then we have inspectors who go out and inspect the work. But if you're talking about a tenant or a landlord having a house for rent and someone going in, checking that house, inspecting the home before it's rented, unless they're on housing, that does not happen. Now, through the housing program, they do have someone who checks those houses, and they do annual inspections.
Well,
But
maybe not quite that severe of going in before they get, but somebody whose job it is, if I'm a renter and I don't have hot water, or the heat doesn't work very well, there's holes in the floor, or I have pests, do you come in to protect those people in that situation? Do you come in and if the person calls and says, I am paying rent, but I can't live in this place, does somebody jump to action to help that person to go in and run interference between that person and the landlord?
we have gotten a few calls of that level, of that nature, but not many. And we have intervened a couple of times. But I will agree, we probably do need to set up an office or have a particular area that address that. And I guess that would be inspection. Byron, I hadn't thought about that. But we've called some landlords, some homeowners or rent landlords out, and we haven't gotten a lot of calls. People usually just find another place to stay, I guess. I don't know. But we have sent out code enforcement officers to residents in the past to check out holes in the floor, because there was one lady who said that she had a hole on her kitchen sink. I think it was from a continuous leak, and they rotted the floor out, and she thought rodents were coming in her house that way. So yes, we sent someone out to check that, and they did make the repairs. We went back to do an inspection to see if the repairs had been made. You don't know the conditions in these houses unless someone reports them to you.
Right.
So at first I thought you were talking about the possibility of everybody who's renting houses having those houses inspected before they are rented or leased, which is much like what the housing authority does. Wouldn't be an idea for the city to have a program such as that. So it's something that we might consider moving forward.
Well, I mean,
but
if I go out and build a new house, somebody from the city comes out and makes sure I built it properly.
at every stage,
Yeah.
you're going to do at least 4 inspections
So the
during that process.
homeowners are protected, but
Right.
somebody who puts a down payment, puts a deposit on a rent house, they don't have those same guarantees, I guess.
That's right.
We can't really talk about Pine Bluff without talking about crime. What is your administration doing to enhance the safety in Pine Bluff? What is your answer to combating crime in Pine Bluff? And what would you point to say have been successes?
I think that we have increased patrol in our city. The visibility of police officers has increased. I think also the fact that many of our officers now have take-home cars have put more of visibility of policemen throughout the community, and I think that has helped. Even though our crime rate is much higher than we would like for it to be, I think over the last few months, year or so, we have seen somewhat of a decrease, especially in some of the activity that we could identify as gang activity. At one point, it's bad now. It's not where we want it to be, but it was much worse. And so I think that increased visibility of officers, we've taken quite a few guns off the street by stopping them for failure to have tail lights, seeing some minor violations and searching. We have confiscated quite a few guns over the past few months, I'd say between a year and 18 months. a lot of the crimes that we're seeing now are domestic, or they're associated with people that they know, you know. But we're still having more juvenile crimes reported than what we'd like, and we're still working on that. I think that as we move forward for our young people, increasing activities in our parks and making more activities available for kids to participate in is going to give them those outside extracurricular, outside of school things to do as they, and we're maintaining that focus on kids who are 12 and above. Because at one point, when I came into office, there was nothing for kids who were 13, 14, from 5 to 12. There were a lot of sports and activities available for them. But beyond that, there weren't many. So we've increased, and we're working aggressively to increase the offerings for those kids.
I didn't have this on my list to ask you, but since you brought that up, one of your proud moments must have been the opening of the newly renovated Merrill Center, or Pine Bluff Community Center now.
Yes, because we felt like we needed that in that neighborhood. Some people wanted us to demolish that building, but I carried 3 contractors over to look at it to see if it was possible to save it. What would it cost to rebuild, you know? And we were looking at how much money we would put in to renovate. So we saw that if we put in $1 million, we started at like $850,000, and it kept going up. But still, at the $1.2 million that we put in, we never could have rebuilt that facility. With all the steel that you have in the gym, you have the strong bones in the walls that you have in the building overall, and you have the main facility with all the amenities that it has. And we got that State Farm grant to redo the kitchen, to give you a state-of-the-art stainless steel kitchen, your music room, your art room, your other recreational room, computer lab, reading room, and then your community space, and then the big basketball gym and the boxing gym on the side. We never could have built that for $1.2 million.
Right.
So after getting it renovated, it was important to us that we have quality instruction offered there.
Right. I know.
And so I think the partnership with the Boys and Girls Club was one of the best that we could have ever formed. We are going to have 2 camps there this summer. There'll be city-operated camps, and then the Boys and Girls Club will start their operation this fall. We had to go through that long process of getting things in place for that transition to take place. And I think we're there now. But I'm proud of the facility. We had some volunteers who would come by from UAPB, and they knew that we were closing the facility for renovation. They had worked over there. They knew the condition of it prior to the renovation. And they came by just before we had the ribbon cutting when we reopened. And one of the guys said, "I thought you were doing a remodel, not a rebuild." And I said, why do you say that? And he said, "This looks like a new building." And I said, "That's what it should look like when we repurpose it, rebuild it, do it. You know, we want to put it in a condition that the people in that community could be proud of it, and would feel like we've invested in that area, in a building that they can utilize."
You
So
know, talking about that building and how far it went from the way it was to how it looks today, you said the south side property, you ended up with more land than you thought. Would you ever consider using some of the school facility? I mean, it's got a gym, it needs work, but does it not have good bones? Could you not turn that into some sort of facility for those families?
We're looking at leaving that facility there. That's a consideration. Yes, we definitely want to park in that area.
Yeah.
And then that could be a wonderful basketball gym, and then we would have another facility there for our community center.
Did you ever find a place for the woman who does the food program out of the school?
Deborah Allen?
Isn't she the one that works out of the school there?
Right. No, we haven't found a place for her yet. I know she knows that she's going to move. We've been looking.
Yeah.
We've taken, and you know, I called you about a building for her. We're still looking. We think we might have a spot that might work, but I don't want to say what that spot is at
Yeah.
this point. But yeah,
Sure.
we do have to help her because what she does is invaluable.
Right.
The food distribution events that she's had throughout COVID have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think she's probably done as much or more than any other group in the state of Arkansas as far as meeting needs
Right.
of needy families in the
Well,
community.
hopefully you'll find a
Oh,
spot, or
yes.
she'll find a spot. I had a couple more questions about crime. This is a personal experience, but I don't think it's unique. My experience is unique to anybody else in town because we have all heard gunfire. But Pat and I, my wife and I, were out walking at the high school track last week and just heard a barrage of gunfire, and it didn't sound like it was that far away. And there were, 30 youngsters who are training. There's a coach that puts them through their paces, and they train in track. And so there are a bunch of people at the track. And I'm just wondering, Jesse Turner mentions shot spotter technology. He's been preaching that for a while. Does anybody consider putting that in place? I know one time I called about another barrage of gunfire, and police were like, "Was it in this direction?" I said, "Yes." And basically, if they don't, if nothing comes of the shooting, it just goes by the wayside. And I don't know that, but with this technology, you would like triangulate and know exactly where these hot spots are. Is that not something the city could consider?
Actually, since Chief Franklin has been in position, we have had many conversations about that. And we've also talked to other cities, and we've talked to one of the companies that will provide that. And we're trying to back that up with the camera systems, because a lot of cities are doing that now. When I first came in, we were pretty serious about that spot shotter, but I talked to cities with it already in place.
Right.
And they said to me that it wasn't really helping them to solve the problem, because most times when the shots, it detects where they're coming from. But by the time law enforcement would get there, there's nobody to be found. Right. So that's the reason we were saying that if you're having it coming from the same area on a fairly regular basis, then if you have the cameras backing it up, then you can get some idea of the description of the cars, if nothing else, if you don't get a license plate number. But I talked to multiple people in law enforcement in cities. I would say this was in 2017, 2018, where they had installed the spot shotter system in cities, and it was really not helping them
Without
solve
the
their
cameras,
crime.
it doesn't help.
That's what they were telling me.
Right.
And because when the officers would get there, there was nobody in sight. And many times, even if you have neighbors in the neighborhoods, they don't want to tell you who they are. I think it's a safety issue for them. They don't know whether they could trust you to be confidential with the information that they provide. So they would say, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anybody, 99% of the time. But we are installing more cameras. We are looking at that technology to see how we can pair it together to make a difference.
This is along the same lines, and I don't remember if this, I may have, but I was talking to Councilmember Alexander about going out to some apartments on South Beach where there had been a homicide. And she said, if you go back a few years, you'll see that there have been numerous homicides at that apartment complex. And it reminded me of the incidents at the bar on Blake Street. Is there any way to zero in on those hot spots and have those not be places where we look back and see multiple homicides or problems?
Now, what we have done, and I think that was with the initiative that the chief brought in, it was honing in on those hot spots, making sure that there was more patrol. I think that was the blue light.
Blue Rain?
Blue Rain,
Yeah.
the Blue Rain operation. And they had off-duty police officers really doing surveillance at those hot spots on a regular basis. And I think since that happened, it has stopped some of the violence that we were having in some of those areas. Now, has it curtailed all of it? No. Or, you know, we don't know the rhyme or reason why these people are shooting these guns. But I don't think that is as bad as it once was. We're not getting as many calls on our end as we were. We don't want any. You know, we don't want anybody hearing shots as what you described that you heard last week when you were out.
Middle of the afternoon. Well,
You know,
4
people
o'clock.
people are saying they hear them sometimes in the middle of the day,
Yeah.
1 and 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know, most times when we've been able to find somebody that will tell us who they saw, they're young people. And that's a problem. It's problematic to me when you tell me you have a 14 or a 15-year-old kid on the street with an AR-15. It's where do they come? How do they get them? Who's providing
Yeah,
them?
that's hardly just our problem in
So-
Pine Bluff. I mean, that's something being considered
It's a national problem.
nationally. Next to last question. Is Pine Bluff a better place to live now, 6 years after you've been in office, than before you took office?
I think so. I think we have some amenities. I think we're moving in the right direction. It's going to take time because we were so far down to come up. I've talked to people who didn't live in Pine Bluff until maybe 2010 and 2012, and they were talking about what it was and the progress that they have seen. I think I'm so close, I don't see the progress that you might see, because we've been working hard at trying to move this city. So am I pleased with the progress we've made? No, because I would have liked to have seen us make much more. But have we really been working and pushing to make things happen? We have been. But, you know, yesterday morning, and every morning that I go to the aquatic center, when I talk to the adults there, and I'm talking about, I was speaking with a lady the other day who is 65 years old, and she's only been swimming for 2 years since the aquatic center opened. And my granddaughter taught her to swim.
Wow.
And she said, I'm so thankful. Now she goes every morning religiously. She's retired. And she goes there every morning. And she talks about the weight that she's lost and how much better she feels. So that's a facility that improves the quality of life in Pine Bluff that, no, we didn't have before. Even just when I went into office, there were 3 buildings in Main Street.
Right.
The street was closed.
Right.
So the street is open. So if you stand at 8th Street and look back toward the courthouse, you can see, you know, straight through.
It
Cars
looked like
are
a
moving.
war zone.
Cars are moving. We have the traffic flowing. The streetscape isn't finished, but part of it is. I drove through there on my way here, and I think it looks a whole lot better this season than it did last season. So I think that's a big improvement. The parks, if you come down Martha Mitchell, starting at the corners like Cherry Street, Martha Mitchell and Cherry, Martha Mitchell and University, Martha Mitchell and Bryant Street, all the way down. It's much cleaner, and people see that. You know, the casino is here, so it's bringing a lot of traffic into our town. I see people from Little Rock, Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Forest City last week. I went in for a meeting down there, and the people, I was amazed at all the people who say, we're in your city on a regular basis. We love your casino. And they like something about Saracen better than they do the one at West Memphis and Hot Springs.
Right.
So it's music to my ears. I mean, it's dollars to my ears to hear them say that, right? So
Right.
I think that's another amenity that people enjoy. One lady told me, many people tell me, they don't gamble, they don't play machines, but they enjoy going there to have another place to go and eat. There's another couple, her husband is in a wheelchair, and she said, he just likes walking around looking. And she drives them up, and they just get out of the house, and it gives them that place to look. So I think that's another attraction that attracts people to our city. Another thing I'm proud that has stayed here, and that's the Dillard's Clearance Store. I check on them on a regular basis. to see how business is going there. Even though the mall is what it is, I'm glad that Dillard's is there, and people are just in Forest City even. One lady was saying that her husband and her brother-in-law likes to come to the casino, but she'll have them drop her off at the Dillard's clearance store because she doesn't have to rush. She said, you know, when you go to a place like that, you have to have time.
Right.
She said, so I take my time. When I finish shopping, I call them and say, okay, I'm ready to eat. So then they pick her up and they go over to the casino and they go to the buffet and they eat.
Wow.
So I think those are things that weren't here 6
Sure.
years ago that have improved the quality. And then we can look at the Merrill Center. That facility was in shambles.
Right.
I wouldn't have sent anybody to that facility in the state that it was in. You know, I think yes, we are moving forward slowly but surely. I think we do need to work on housing. We have to continue to focus on crime and making this city a safer community, just as every other community in the nation. That's a concern for everyone.
Okay, I want to throw in one more question before I ask you the last question, and that you brought this up of all the things there are to do in Pine Bluff. But, you know, the effort out of the Advertising Commission to bring historical, cultural tourism to Pine Bluff seems to have a lot of promise. What's your take on that?
I think that with the initiatives that they're doing through A&P, partnering with the vision that people like Jimmy Cunningham,
Right.
you know, that have, and the preservation district as a whole, I think that we're primed to become a destination city, especially with the rich history that we have. I think that once we can get everybody on the same page, and we're getting there because those collaborative sessions are taking place, I think that Pine Bluff will definitely be a prime destination city.
Mr. Cunningham is very convincing when he starts
Very,
talking
very,
about that.
He's passionate
Yeah.
because, you know, he believes
Yeah.
in his vision. And I think his vision with the rich musical heritage that we have, I love going into the restaurant part of the building on Main Street, the UAPB's building.
Right.
It's like a museum already with the artifacts that he's put in that space.
Oh, I didn't know he had put that.
Oh, you should go down and
Okay.
check it out when you have a chance.
Last question, are you going to run for re-election?
That I haven't made a decision yet, but I will say that with the projects that are on the table right now, especially with the housing, the Promise program that I talked about, the Education Promise program, it's going to take a while to get that going. I want that promise to definitely become a reality because I think it has the potential to really turn education around in Pine Bluff. Because if we start every child opening that savings account at kindergarten, my vision is when they open that account and they start kindergarten, they have to do an autobiography. And we start a file that goes along with that program. And we have to have making sure that that file follows them from year to year. So they'll put in that file who they are. My name is, who their parents are, you know, when they were born, their siblings, their hobbies, and what they want to be when they grow up, kindergarten. Even if they can't write it, somebody can write those things for them. We can have it in a format of a framework that it'll be done at kindergarten. First grade, maybe they can write it themselves, all right? Second grade, they do another one. Well, they might have wanted to be a fireman when they were in kindergarten, but they might have decided to be an engineer by the time they get to first grade. But they may continue to be an engineer, but they'll look at the many areas of engineering that they can go into. Same is true as kindergarten. I might want to be a doctor, but now I want to be an orthodontist. You know, I think that it gives them hope, it gives them vision, and it helps them dream. So we have to help our kids dream. We have to help them have that vision in their eyes and have a goal. And if they can maintain those goals, I think those aspirations can become realities by the time. Because have you talked to kids when they graduate from high school and they don't have a clue? as to what it is they want to do
Right.
after. Or even if I've talked to kids in college, even if they go on to college, many times they don't have a clue as what field they're
Right.
going into, even then. But I know that when I came along, we were in the cotton patch, right? Everybody knows I'm a cotton patch girl. We picked and chopped cotton, and Daddy said, your deliverance is education. The only way out of this cotton patch and change your life is education. So I had to think, if I'm going to be educated, what do I want to be? First job, I wanted to be a nurse. My brother was riding my sister on a bike down a dirt road one day. She thought he was about to turn over. She feared, pulled her foot in, and a spoke cut into her foot. Okay? We were a distance from the house on a dusty road. We had to get her to the house, and it appeared as though she was going to literally bleed to death. My father believed that kerosene was a cure-all. So we had a big 50-gallon kerosene tank in the backyard. He took a wash pan, put so much kerosene in it, put her foot in it, and it was instantly bloody, total blood. I had to go in the house and lie down. I thought my sister was going to bleed to death.
I remember that story from my uncle too.
A
lot of people thought kerosene was.
I thought to myself, how can I be a nurse when I can't stand the sight of this much blood? I was sickened. So at that point, I decided that I wanted to be a secretary, okay? But then when I looked at secretaries on television, walking into their boss's office with this ink pen, stenographer's pad, pencil, skirt, high heel shoes, cross their legs, start taking dictation from their boss, go back to their space, start typing. There were no computers, but they were on the big typewriters and they're typing. I thought, where in the world, in Gethsemane, Wabaseka, Altamont, Pine Bluff, will I find a job that I can earn a living being a secretary? So I stopped, put the brakes on, can't be a secretary. So at that point, for a while, I didn't know. So I started spending a lot of time with my aunts, my father's sisters and sister-in-laws who were teachers. And I loved talking to them. I was always good with kids. My mother made me the family babysitter. So I guess, like I said, I was about 8th, 9th grade. I'd say 9th grade, I decided I wanted to be a teacher, and I never changed. So I want our kids to start dreaming, to start setting goals and striving to reach those goals at kindergarten and moving it up. So when they graduate from high school, they know what their skill set is, they know what training they need for that career that they aspire, to work toward. And I think we'll have more successful young people in our community, and that would turn the community around.
I don't want to finish your sentence for you, but you went into that by way of saying there was a lot of things left to do, so that it sounded like you were going to say that you might need to run in 2024 to finish those.
So maybe, it's looking like I can't finish that. I want to see the housing through. I'd like to see that housing program grow through, that Promise program. We have to make sure we have the Opportunity House up and running, So
we'll put you down as a maybe.
A maybe at this point.
Yeah.
A maybe, because I've been, considering, is this something I want to do? I really would rather go home and go back into my retirement. But I'd also like to see some of these goals come to fruition.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time that you have taken out of your busy schedule and spent it with us here. Anything else you'd like to say?
Let me think. In reference to maybe some of the things I've been criticized for, I always told my students that if you can't make a mistake, you can't make anything. And the only way you don't ever make a mistake is that you don't do anything. I know I've made some mistakes along the way, but I will say I've been serious about the job, and I've truly given it my best. And I will continue to move forward giving it my best, striving to improve as I go.